Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Daily with Jay and Clay and David. David, it's good to see you again, my friend. Always a pleasure to have you on. Clay, you're kind of old news. We see you all the time here. So, I mean, really, this is about David being here. And, David, I'm going to throw out this to you. Stepping up or stepping down is the question in your wheelhouse. And for those that don't know David, he's going to let you know what popped into his head as soon as I said that. And let's see if you're right. So hang on there with us. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. And so, David, before you jump in with the stepping up or stepping down, please share with the folks a little bit about who you are. We'll make sure we drop the information in the description for you as well. But please introduce yourself for those that don't know, and stepping up or stepping down.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me on, guys. So David Piatek, I am a loan officer, mortgage specialist, specializing in VA loans, still currently serving in the military myself. I've been in the business for about 18 years and just love to educate the veteran community on how benefits work. So you educate yourself before you go and talk with somebody else, because a lot of times veterans get steered away from using their benefits. You guys can check out my channel, VA Housing Education, and see all the current trends and videos that we do. But JC, that's a great question that we get a lot right now from people, is that, if you bought a home back during the pandemic, you probably have really good interest rate. You may have a lot of equity in your property right now, and you're kind of getting to that point where a lot of people don't want to move just because they have great rates, great payments, but a house may be too much for you. So you may want to step down. Maybe kids have moved out, your lifestyle has changed. Maybe you want to move from the suburbs to the city, and that has its own challenges. And then the opposite is that if your family is growing and you outgrew your house, what can you do? So you do have a couple of factors that go into it. One of them being that the VA home loan limit is actually going up next year for the single family loan limit to $806,500. So when you have multiple VA loans, you can actually borrow a little bit more.
That is an extremely, I don't think people understand exactly what you were just saying. That is so important. So what some people may have just heard is there's a loan limit.
Yep.
And a VA loan has a loan limit, which it used to back in the day, that you couldn't exceed a certain amount at 100%. And I really want you to spend a moment to really dissect that a little bit. Explain to people who maybe the last VA loan they did was 10 years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what did a loan limit mean to them, and what has changed on that? And then what you mean by multiple VA loans, because as we all know, many people think that's a one bite out of the apple and that's all you get. So dispel that myth and explain the loan limits, because what you said is, look, folks, this is a big sack of gold that he's about to unfold here. I guess you don't unfold it out of a sack. Reach in and grab gold. Whatever. You get my point. All right.
All right. So when it comes to that is a very big misconception, because a lot of veterans are saving their VA loan for that special house. Well, I'll tell you that, one, you could use the loan multiple times. And if you don't have an outstanding VA home loan, there's technically no limit. So if you want to buy, I'm going to get crazy here, a $5 million house with zero money down, you can do that. Now, look at, which is crazy. Now look at the other side, and this includes up to a 4-unit property. So you can actually buy income properties, live in it, and have someone else technically make the mortgage payment. So we have a lot of veterans that utilize that program. And we should actually do a whole video on just leveraging multifamilies, which maybe that could be our next video, Jason. So now you look at it from another angle, is when you have multiple VA home loans, then there is going to be a cap on how much you can borrow, which is basically the Freddie Mac single family loan limit. And that is changing next year to $806,500. And it doesn't make a difference how many units you have. If you're using a VA loan, you're capped at that dollar amount. Now, the important thing to understand is that if you took out a loan for, let's say, $206,500, you still have $600,000 left to buy another home with no money down. I want to repeat that one more time. If you're within that entitlement limit, you could still buy, in this example, up to $600,000 down with not a penny down. But what happens if you want to buy a place over 600,000 in this example? So if you bought a place for 700, you have to do a 25% down payment on the difference. So 25 of 100,000 is $25,000, which is still cheaper than looking at a lot of other mortgages. And you combine that with all the flexibility a VA loan has, and typically they're going to have better financing terms.
I'll tell you this, just from my full, being completely open here. My wife and I are looking at moving, and we fall into those COVID rates. We closed on our house. COVID shut the world down on Sunday. We closed on Saturday. Okay, boom, that was it. And actually, the next day we were in Disney World, and we missed days at Disney World because of that. And I'm still salty. And no, we did not get refunded. Right, but that's neither here or there. We have these COVID rates in our house, and we're looking at moving. And essentially, what we have found is we're going to buy either the same house or smaller, but have the same payments. And that's essentially what a bigger interest rate means to me, right? And so you're paying more for more house. But I'm so glad you mentioned location. So right now, myself, I live in the Beltway of Washington, D.C. And if you know what house prices are up here, you know it sucks. Okay, It is terrible. And so that's one reason why we want to move. And then we look at veteran benefits. We're looking at Huntsville, Alabama, still a city area, but the housing market down in Huntsville, Alabama is just beautiful, right? A $600,000 house in Alabama is essentially like a $1.5 million home in DC. Probably more if I had to take a wild guess. And so my main question to you, and this is really for myself, but I assume the viewer would want to know as well, if you do fall into those lower COVID rates, how are you managing that, right? How am I going to go to my wife and say, honey, I want to pay more money for less house, right? Like that's essentially what's going on.
So you got a couple options here. When you look at this, there's a couple ways you can do this. So what I immediately do when people say, hey, I have a current home, should I sell, should I buy, and how do I evaluate that? So the first thing you want to do is look at your current mortgage payment and what you can get in the open rental market. Because if you're breaking even or making a couple $100 and that's it, it might be worth just unloading it, and you're basically changing it for a different lifestyle, right? Being in Arlington where you're looking to go, most of the time it's going to be worth the sacrifice. On the flip side, if you're making money on your rental, not only does your tenant pay for your mortgage payment, allowing you to build equity, even more equity over time, because guess what? They're not building more land, and we're really not invading other countries to take more land to make it the United States at the current moment.
Yeah, not right at this moment.
Not at this moment, but we may be expanding. The other part to it is that if you're making money on your investment property, your current property, it turns into investment, you could take that money and offset your higher mortgage. So now it's doing two things for you. One, someone else is paying down your mortgage and they're paying it down, and you're building equity and you're gaining appreciation. And on the flip side, they're paying for your higher interest rate, basically equalizing what that rate would be, like the effective rate, because you're getting money off your other asset. And as I say this, what I realize is for all the people that are renters out there and all the people that are saying, I don't want to make a mortgage payment, you are making a mortgage payment, just somebody else's. And if you're living with your parents, you're mooching and you need to get out on your own.
Just food for thought. I want my kids to live with me forever.
What? No,
my kids can stay with me. Okay. Everyone else's, if you're an adult, you got to go. But my 4 kids, they can cuddle up right next to me. I'm perfectly fine with that.
When they're 30 years old, you don't want them cuddling with you, man.
That's true. Yeah. Do you get that beard scruff on you?
Yeah. Weird, I guess.
So yeah, for Clay, I mean, look, you might be able to go get a bigger, better house, right? Which is going to be a great thing. And I think that you bring up a good point, David, about with a lower interest rate, from the years past creates this environment in which you might be able to get close to that break even, maybe make a little bit. And even in some cases, even if you're taking a little bit of a loss on it, small loss, depending on the housing market, I mean, there's micro markets everywhere. I mean, I had a house, just for an example, that I bought it in, I can't even remember, 2003, I think, 2003, and it was a crazy time. And it went up 170,000 in a year and a half. So fine. I'll take a short loss. I'll pick up $500 a month loss if I know, which you don't know. It's a roll of the dice always. But I mean, you can kind of ascertain what your local market is doing, your local area. The other thing that you need to consider, I think, David, and I'm sure you would agree, is are you going to be the sole contact for your rental property, or are you going to pay an agency who's going to collect 8%, 10% of the rent? Because that's something else that you'll have to factor in. And in some cases, and this is what I want to hear from you, David, I'm going to preface it with this. Anybody who's watching, who is thinking, who's even in the realm of this, never, never, never self-segregate out because you don't think that you would qualify for some reason. Have a conversation. David is absolutely available. Reach out to him and have that conversation. Let him tell you you don't qualify, right?
And why? On me. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. Thank you. But at least listen, the thing is, with that said, it is true because, you know, we've had people reach out that are like, look, I'm not ready. I know it. I need help putting a plan together. And I'm happy to do that, right? Because you made a good point. Like looking a year out, 6 months to a year out, it's important. And for some people, they're like, I don't think I'm ready. And then they're like, surprising. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're in a great financial position. But again, it's up to you. It's your money. So you kind of have to go at your pace. And I know we've talked about it before. Right now, going into that winter market is a great time because things slow down overall. And one other thing I want to touch on when you talk about, and this is more of like a long-term investment strategy, when your values go up in different markets, right? In past, some values would go up higher, some would go up lower. But right now, what we've seen is that across the country, home values have risen up. So if you focus on paying your house off as fast as possible, when you sell for cash and you're buying in other areas that have similar prices to your property and you're buying it in cash, then it doesn't make a difference what the interest rate is. So if you budget, you set money aside, stop going out getting coffee every day. That's $6 plus a bagel. That's another $7. Yeah, Clay, you're going to save some money. Right. And it just all adds up. And if you can make, if you have a 30-year mortgage right now and you make 15-year payments on that 30-year mortgage, you'll pay it off in 15 years and save an insane amount of more interest. If you have a lower interest rate mortgage, you're even in a better spot because you're already paying less interest than the current consumer is. So that's why you focus in on that. And I'll also give a big kudos to people that bought homes in the last year. So in the last 2 months, there was over 300,000 people that refinanced. Out of those 300,000 people, the average savings was $320. That equates to about $57,000 in mortgage payments they saved. So when you think, like we've talked about before, it's not about trying to get the market, time it. We're not, most of us here are not sitting trying to be investing moguls. We're trying to figure out, buy a place, create stability for family, and then like, hey, so you look at what can you afford today? And do you like the area? If I can afford the payment today, rates drop later, guess what? I'm blessed. I can move on and I can refinance, lower my payment. While the other people in my neighborhood that are looking to sell, their buyers are coming in at already higher price points. That's how you keep getting this spread of what you purchase it for and having appreciation over time.
I think what really wraps up this entire video, and I'm so glad you guys said it, is people who rent, they say they can't afford a mortgage payment. it's hilarious because they are, and some, right? Because if you're,
Right.
if you're renting out your home, you want to pocket some of that. And
You
don't
have to.
forget, there's taxes. Okay, so you're paying someone else's mortgage payment. You're paying someone else's state taxes on that. And so, yes, you are paying a mortgage payment. It's just not yours, which absolutely sucks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and so with that being said, I think there's two things to think about, and then I have a question for you. One is maybe you can't afford a house in the area in which you live, right? Maybe you think that it's too expensive. Again, check with the professionals in that area, right? Check with your realtors, check with your lender. David's here on this channel for a reason, because he's a resource. Check and make sure, don't self-segregate out. And the other thing is, you know, like Clay was saying, looking in other areas, right? If you're looking in a different area, in a different state, look at the house prices there. Look at getting approved. Get the horse in front of the cart instead of the other way around, like a lot of us end up doing, jumping through hoops. My question for you, David, is we talked about the person who may have the house today, right? And they're thinking about either moving up into something bigger, better, badder, or they're looking to downsize, and what we're going to do with that current home that may potentially have a lower interest rate. Let's talk that through for a second on what you as a lender look at with regard to, well, you have a debt. Yes, it's an asset. Good for you. But there's also a debt there. You have some money that's going out every month. What does that look like? How do you bridge that debt with rental income? Do you have to get a renter in? Do you magically make up a number for rent? Walk somebody through what that really looks like and how they would qualify to make the move to the next house.
Great question with that. So this is what's amazing about the VA loan. On a departing residence, if you can get, and you remember using the VA loan on your next purchase, if you're on your departing residence, if you can get what's called a competitive market analysis, a CMA from a realtor, to say that your real estate market is strong and what the average rental income is for your type of property, if it covers the payment, that's all you need. And they just offset your mortgage payment. And which gets, again, I want to be realistic about something. It's awesome. But man, do people get themselves in trouble? The option is there, and you don't even need reserves to do this, by the way, meaning like you don't need extra. So you could be zero money in the bank. You buy a house because you get a seller credit. You depart your residence and you don't have a renter. Now you got to cover 2 mortgage payments. Okay. So the VA puts a lot of trust into you to make the right decision. And unfortunately, you have lending institutions and, you know, other types of people that may steer you into saying this is a great idea, but you really need to do your homework with it. That's why it's so powerful, because, hey, if I can buy another place and offset my mortgage payment with just the CMA and go use the rest of my VA entitlement, it's powerful, especially for veterans that also want to move to different areas. And you touched on something that I'm going to do a video on soon, because people are always complaining there's not enough affordable homes. And I'm thinking, and I used to think the same thing until last night. And someone was telling me about like trying to buy a place. They couldn't find it. I'm like, you know what? This doesn't make sense. So late last night, I'm doing research for videos. I'm like, let me go online and just start looking at properties. And I'm like, you know what? There's plenty of beautiful places that have homes that are $80,000 to $125,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath with an acre of property all over the United States, all over. So if you have flexibility, like having disability income, you work remote, man, there's a lot that you can do.
Oh yeah. And you know what? You bring up a good point. And Clay, imagine this for a second. Somebody has, let's say, 100% VA compensation, and maybe they've got some SSDI coming in, right? Now they can go live all over the United States, and even in high cost states, right? There's still affordable housing
There is.
in these high cost states. So if you want to stay within a certain geographic location because you have family, grandkids, whatever it is, there's still options. I will say this: the wider you make your circle, right, the more options you will have. You know, here's one more question for you, David. I know we only got you for a limited amount of time, and we value it. Thank you for being on with us. We talked about departing that home if the market analysis makes sense and covers the mortgage payment. Well, let's just throw out there that the mortgage payment's $3,000 and the market analysis comes back with a rental market supporting $2,500. What happens with that $500 deficit?
That's a great question as well. So typically what's going to happen is you're going to have to factor that into your debt to income ratio. But a lot of times when you're facing those type of losses, that's going to be really tough for people to swallow that, unless they're making just a ton of money. But another factor that goes into it, and this is why planning is so important. And obviously life events happen. The only time we see somebody having a negative rental income or the CMA situation is where either they moved somewhere and they thought that, oh, I'm going to live here for like a year or two and rent it out and make money, but didn't do the research. So that's bad on them. But the other part is, life events happen. And now all of a sudden, if you were to sell that home, it'll cost you too much money. So we've seen that happen as well. One powerful thing with the VA loan is that your VA loan is assumable. So if you're sitting on an upside down market, which that's another factor when you're going into searching at homes, you should be factoring what is the rental market for these properties. Because if you, like that example, hey, my mortgage payment's $3,500 a month, but I can only rent it for $2,500. Does that make sense? But again, it can if that's something that you want to do with your property. But a VA loan is assumable. So where people have it a year or two and they really don't have any equity built in, or 3 years, but they have a great rate and a great term, another veteran could come in and swap entitlement and they could save a bunch of money doing something like that. So it's just another avenue for them to be able to go down. So, but thanks again for having me on, guys. As usual, I appreciate it.
Hey, we really appreciate you, David. Did you have any parting words there, Clay?
The only thing I want to say is if we do not help each other, something went wrong. That was it. I got you.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty. You know what? You're catching up, man. You're graduated to the next level. All right. Hey, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.